The NES was released in 1985 in North America and was a huge success. In 1991, the Super NES was released, an appropriate successor to the glorious NES. But just because the Super NES was out didn't mean the NES was done. Just the contrary, actually. After the Super NES was released, marked a time I refer to as the rare NES era. A lot of NES products released after the Super NES was released just didn't sell well or were released in small quantities. Just to name a few games, Panic Restaurant, Power Blade 2, Contra Force, Bonk's Adventure, and so on. Not all late releases games are rare, like Yoshi's Cookie for example, came out in 1993, not rare. But a lot of your rare NES titles were these late releases. Now, Nintendo knew there was still a market for these NES titles, so in 1993 they released the infamous, to collectors anyway, NES Top Loader for a reasonable $49.99. If you can find a new one in box for that price now, I suggest you take it. The Top Loader was a redesigned version of the NES designed to help extend the life of the system. It was in production all the way up until 1995. That's crazy to think about. The NES was supported up until 1 year before the N64 came out. But anyway, this new NES was vastly different from the classic NES most people know. First and foremost, it's much smaller, and living up to its name, it's a top-loading console. Meaning, the games are inserted on top, like most other consoles. But, is that it? Is it just a redesigned NES with no new bells or whistles? Well, not exactly. The Top Loader offers a few interesting things that the previous model didn't, but it also suffers from a huge flaw that almost ruins the system. First, what's different? Well, like I said, it's much smaller and the cartridges are inserted on top. But it also has two nice additions. First, it has the ability to play European PAL games, which is a cool addition, though not really necessary, but hey, I'm not complaining. Also, something new is the Top Loader's controller. You can use a standard NES controller if you want, but it also comes with its own controller dubbed the Dogbone controller, because of its shape. Now, the Dogbone controller is pretty nice, but it's a little small. It could be a little bigger, like maybe the Super NES controller, and it'd fit much nicer in the hand. It works fine how it is, but a size upgrade would have been nice. Other than that, it plays just as nicely as the original controller and fits the Top Loader's look very nicely. I should also mention that the Dogbone controller will work on the original NES model. Also a plus for the Top Loader, it plays games much better. On the original NES, the infamous 72-pin issue plagued the system. When you push the game into the system and push it down to lock it in place, you're forcing the pins of the cartridge against the pins of the 72-pin adapter. It wears down easily over time and requires a new adapter, which I'm sure we've all experienced. The Top Loader doesn't use this method, so the connection hardly ever wears down at all. Just keep your games clean and it works like a charm. But it isn't a perfect system, far from it. There are a couple flaws with the system. One is not a big deal, the other is a very big deal. First, while a system is smaller in size, with a game in it, it's nearly twice as tall as the standard NES. If you keep your NES tucked in a nice compartment, the Top Loader most likely will not work for you. The standard NES is nice for that reason because the games slide right in the front and are tucked away out of sight when you're playing. But if your NES system is sitting out someplace with adequate room, it's not an issue. Now, it is time for the Top Loader's biggest flaw, and it's a glaring flaw. There is absolutely no AV output on this bad boy. You are required to use RF out. This simply makes no sense to me. The original NES had AV out and RF out. Why take out the AV? If anything, take out the damn RF. I hate those damn cords with the coaxial twist things. Now, it's possible to mod the Top Loader to allow for AV out, but it's something I'd like to have done to mine. But out of the box, it's just RF. Now, here's the real kick in the balls. Japan has an AV version of the Top Loader known as the Famicom AV. So let me get this straight, Nintendo. The original Famicom had RF only, no AV. The original NES had both RF and AV. The Famicom Top Loader system was updated to have both RF and AV, but over here we get shafted by only getting RF. Now, like I said, you can modify it to play AV out, but it just seems like a glaring flaw to not have it included. So the bottom line, the Top Loader's a nice system, but it's really heads or tails. People with a regular NES aren't necessarily at a disadvantage compared to top loader owners, other than the 72-pin connector issue, and you cannot play PAL games, both problems which the top loader fixed. But no AV? Come on. That's my only real complaint with the system. But if you can look past that flaw, or get a mod, I say the top loader is exactly what it's supposed to be, a nice, compact, cheaper NES alternative, and for that reason, I say pick one up if you ever have the opportunity.